Hello and welcome to the show today. I am so excited to get to introduce Jimi Gibson, who is the vice president of Thrive Marketing Agency. This agency is representing thousands of clients actively with a team of almost 200 people making waves in the marketplace. And I'm so excited to have him here on the show today. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit more about Thrive, about what you guys do and who you serve?
Yeah, so the company was founded 20 plus years ago by Matt Bowman. His goal, he's sort of a multi generational entrepreneur, and he just wanted to be able to help people grow their business through the power of the internet. And so I know we're going to get into AI probably a little bit today, but we've seen just about every algorithm shift and every change in the world as far as the way businesses communicate their product or service online. And so we don't specialize in any particular vertical or any type size business. We help the mom and pops. We help large franchise and multi-location enterprise companies. We don't have a cookie cutter approach. We don't have long-term contracts. We want to earn our business every single month by, the results that we provide. And yeah, I would say we're full service. So do all the things necessary to drive leads and convert those leads for various types of business owners.
So cool. I'm really actually very excited that we're getting to talk about marketing because me in particular, I love marketing. And I know that was a kind of a transition that I had to make where there was a long time ago, way back when I felt like it was like, oh, one of those kind of cringy topics. Like some people kind of treat marketing as that thing like, oh, and we know we have to do it, but they might have different sort of like connotations with that term until I came to the point of realizing like marketing is something you do for people, not to people. And it's actually an incredible service to help get your message out to the people who most need and want what you have to offer. With that, I also understand that marketing is a very large umbrella. And when somebody asks, do you do marketing? I mean, which part of it are we talking about? And then here you're working in a field that is ever evolving, especially as AI has been released and really altered the terrain. So, what are some things that you are seeing as being major shifts that are happening in marketing today, with especially with the new AI models and stuff like that kicking in, and how that's affecting today's business?
Yeah. And so the obviously the traditional type of marketing originated with newspaper advertising, direct mail advertising, magazines. There used to be three networks for television advertising and marketing. And so as the internet got going, then a lot of that communication happens digitally. And so what I love about the digital platform is the ability to measure and know the results that you're getting, because through cookies and other technologies, you're able to track exactly, you put this amount of money in, your average order value, how many people might visit the site or what your conversion rate is. And so a lot of science is part of it, but there's also a lot of art related to it. And I know with your branding expertise and messaging, people are attached to brands. And so we have to analyze what is the brand strength, what has been their history, what is their market share, who is their best customer that will bring them more business in the future, do they have repeat services? And so really getting into where is that client now and where do they want to go? And so we have a lot of conversations about unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do as well, where it's not a slot machine that you put money in and pull a lever and money comes out the bottom. And I would probably relate that, instead of a slot machine, maybe a vending machine, because a vending machine, you're sure you're going to get something out the other end. And so there's a lot of testing and a lot of understanding. What we're seeing now, and we've seen over the last year, is quite a shift in the way people are visible and the way businesses are visible, obviously because of AI. And if you think of it as a pizza pie, there are a lot more slices in that pizza pie now. So it used to be traditional SEO, or search engine optimization, would allow you to optimize your site, typically a page on that site or multiple pages on that site, for highly profitable keywords. You also had paid approaches where you could pay various platforms, whether it be Meta, whether it be Google as well, for ad placement. There are a variety of other places that you can pay for visibility. And really, the rug got pulled out from under everybody at the same time. And so everybody's sort of scrambling. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And so The reason why I'm on this show is because I just want to give some information that would be helpful to businesses and business owners and marketers and folks who are trying to figure all this out. I don't have a crystal ball and I can't tell you what's going to happen next year. Everything is moving very quickly, but people are worried. I like to say there's a fork in the road, and I'm more of the half glass full optimistic side. And so there are some definite advantages to what's going on, and would love to jump in and break those down, because those are the conversations we have every day. Because when a business owner calls and they rely on that traffic to their website and they go, what is going on? My traffic is dropping. And then, we take a breath and we go, okay, let's look at this in a systematic way. And then we can figure out exactly what's going on. What do we need to do to shift? And often it's not as bad a news as they think, for some factors of things that are happening behind the scenes that I think will be fascinating for people to understand.
So let me get this straight. You mean to tell me that there is no vending machine for sales? We cannot just put money in and get money out exponentially and just keep that going? That's what you're trying to tell me. You just told me that there's no vending machine and you can't predict the future. My hopes have been shattered. I hope you're proud of yourself. No, I mean, when it comes to study of marketing, like, I find it so fascinating. I also find it amusing to see how things have transitioned and just how people do business, right? When you look back across time, like, there was a time when the bigger companies were the ones with the leverage, really. Like, you had maybe a few choices in town, but not a whole lot. And, it might just be that one hardware shop and everybody counted on that business to get what it was they needed. Now you have a massive shift that's happened where people have the power in their pocket to simply decide who stays and who goes. And it's really forcing business owners to approach their marketing in a different way. And I think what's cool about it, though, is there's so much that I'm seeing now, even in light of AI. I would say, especially in light of AI, where we're seeing more of I would say, demand, but also opportunity to go back to reinforcing the human element and the human to human connections and relationships that I think business really should be all about. Now, one of the things that you hit on a while ago was you were talking about businesses being invisible. And I know there are some companies out there, they've been at it maybe 10, 20 years, and they were so visible. And now all of a sudden, how did we just disappear overnight? Can you explain to them how that is happening in light of the transitions that are happening with today's search engines?
So how long do we have? 3 hours for this show? No. Okay. Um, Let me give a little bit of background, and then I think that'll bridge into what's going on with the whole AI world of visibility. So the listeners are probably familiar with traditional SEO, the way that Google, there's about 230 different data points that determined whether you were on page 1 or page 100. The goal originally was, hey, I want to be on the top 5 pages. Then it was like, I got to be on the first page, because people reconfigured their search query to get a result on page 1. And then obviously it was to be in the top 5 of page 1. And so it was always this race based on keyword optimization, because we as consumers were trained in about 5 to 7 words on how to find a business or service that we were interested in. And what ended up happening was you would get these 10 blue links, and then you could choose which one of those links do you want to investigate. Like, maybe you recognize the name in the third link, so you don't always go for the first link. And those were all ranking a page on the website. And so there was a lot of effort to optimize the page in a variety of ways. Backlinks were important. Obviously, the content on the site was important. And again, technical aspects on the website. And so there was just a lot that went into it. Well, they actually, as of this recording, about 2 weeks ago, Google announced that those 10 blue links are actually going away. And so we're like, what? Those 10 blue links? Well, what's happening? Well, last year, actually 60% of the searches on organic search in Google ended without a click. And you go, what? And so I told you before about people's organic traffic dropping. Well, if you do a search and you don't click, well, what's happening? Well, there's a lot going on that search engine result page now. There's AI mode with Google. There's AI overviews. There's featured snippets. There's a knowledge panel. And if you don't know these terms, you probably have seen them on the page. And so people are getting the information without ever clicking. The other thing that's happening is these large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Perplexity, Copilot, people are using those. And so you may have heard the term generative engine optimization or answer engine optimization. They are using these tools to get answers. And they're not a search tool like Google is. It's a different game. And so there's a little bit of a clue in the name. So answer engine optimization. Whereas when you were doing a Google search, it would be 5 to 7 words. The typical number of words to start off a conversation with one of these large language models is about 32 words. And so it's much more conversational. And so you might find an answer on Google. You don't click, you go over to ChatGPT, you start doing some more research. And depending on the history, and you mentioned, hey, we've been in business for 20 years. We've always been visible. What's going on? Why am I invisible? There are certain places that these large language models go to get their information. You may or may not be cataloged in the training data of these large language models, and that's why you vanished. And so I'll do one more little piece here, and then I'll stop and we can pick it apart. I talked about the slices of pizza before. Let's use that pizza analogy again. I call it the pizzeria effect. So every 3 to 6 months, each one of these large language models spends a whole lot of money, and they go search the entire internet for everything that's out there, all the books, all the websites, all the reviews that are about you, all the reviews about the product, and they catalog this into their training data. And so that's the pizza dough. And so they put that pizza dough in the refrigerator. And then, LaTricia, when you are searching for a question related to a product or service, and you type that in to, let's say you use Claude. Claude's gotten a lot of press recently. What it'll do is it'll retrieve that training data. And if you're in that training data, then it starts to make a pizza, right? And so it lays out that dough. But if you're not in that training data, it still does live retrieval and what's going on right now. And those are the pizza toppings. So depending on what AI can see, you're either going to get a nice thick crust pizza with lots of toppings and gooey cheese, or you're going to get a really thin or no crust pizza with very few toppings. And there is a chance that it's actually going to make somebody else's pizza and play it off that it's your pizza, because if it can't figure it out, it's going to make up a pizza. And so that's what we're all navigating. And so if you just think about it in that way, you have to be in the areas where it's looking, and there are ways that you can figure that out. And, I can give some actionable things that people can start to do right now, but that's why people have sort of fallen off the radar, because search is happening in a different way. But there is some good news, and maybe we'll save the good news for the second part of the conversation. But does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
It definitely makes the topic easier to digest. Pun intended. Now, one of the things that I appreciated too, though, is like when we first talked, you were sharing about a lot of the research that you did. Like we're hearing so many reports, we're hearing so many updates about the changes that are happening, Google implementing AI, along with how it's affecting other searches, and then really just so many other platforms across the board, right? How we construct websites, you name it, right? But one of the things that I appreciated is that you guys did a deep dive. And when we say deep dive, it was 2,400 queries that you guys did into these platforms with, you have to give me the numbers again on how many companies you guys studied, scoring each of them on a 100-point scale on how they were actually showing up. Can you share a little bit more about what drove you to do that research, what you found in that research, and maybe some of the metrics that you were using to determine whether somebody was actually visible or not in those AI models?
Yeah. Great. You've done your homework, LaTricia. We'll also have a link to that research report that I think you're going to include in the show notes. As I go through this, if you're driving or on the treadmill, you don't need to take notes. You can get all of this data in the report. And it's interesting. And I know you work with executives on their brand presence, branding, and especially personal branding used to be sort of a nice to have, but not really important. I was curious about that, and I'll tell you why. So we started seeing on the writing on the wall about 18 months ago. And, we've been around for 20 years. Most of our leads come inbound. We haven't really been that proactive from a PR standpoint, and telling people about all the things that we've been through over the last 20 years. And so the founder came to me and said, hey, we think we should be out there, maybe sharing some of our knowledge. We need a face for the brand, and it's not going to be me. It's going to be you, Jimi. And I went, what? And so at first I was excited, and then I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Well, I did a whole lot of stuff last year, and I tracked what I was doing. It was a variety of speaking on stages, being in webinars, podcast interviews, writing articles for Forbes and Entrepreneur, just a variety of things. And so about Q3 of last year, I wanted to give it a little bit of time to bake. Apparently, we've got this cooking metaphor that we're going to keep going with. And I wanted to know what was working. And I started to catalog that. And then I thought, you know what? I wonder whether my experience is similar to other businesses. And so again, we don't work with any specific industry. So I looked at 400 businesses across 5 verticals. And so it was legal, medical, restoration, home services, and franchise, which encompasses a lot, because if you think about medical, that's a dentist, that's a med spa, all sorts of different things. Home services, plumbers, HVAC, roofers, all those types of things. I really actually wanted to study more, but at that 400 number, you can get about a 95% statistical relevance with about 4.5% margin of error. And I wanted to spread it out across the US so that it wasn't geographic dependent. And I also looked at 2 different size companies, one with a medium revenue of about 7.5 million, the other with 23.9 million. I also wanted to make sure that I knew who the owner was, and I could find information on the owner. And so not only did it corroborate my personal experience with visibility, and I was sort of unknown in the space of being a thought leader when I started, and then there was definite shift, but there were some amazing statistics that came out of that. So out of those 400 businesses, 46% of the business owners were invisible. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I wonder if that's a big deal or not. And so then I started looking at some independent research. And so Search Engine Journal did a study November of last year where they looked at executives who posted on LinkedIn 10 times a year, not a month, not a week, a year. And they found that if they posted at that cadence, their referral base would increase 30% and their deal size would be 3.7 times larger. It's like, oh, that's crazy. Then I also looked at other independent research that said 42% of business owners would do a deal faster and at a higher number with a company that they had seen content from an executive from that organization. I was like, okay, this is all starting to add up here. Then I looked at traffic numbers year over year from January 2025 to January 2026, and I wanted to know, how does that correlate? Because Gartner came out with a study that this year organic search is going to drop 25%, and then 3 years it's going to drop 50%. And so if you have declining traffic, then I also looked at, and again, I'm throwing out a bunch of numbers and it's all going to come home here in a second, that a referral from an AI source like ChatGPT or Perplexity actually converts at 4.4 times the normal conversion rate. And so why? Because they've already done their research, they come pre-sold. And so even if your traffic drops, you can still retain revenue, but the key is you have to be visible. And what stood out to me was the owner, the founder, or an executive within the organization was the multiplier that allowed that business to actually accelerate their revenue in a way that I'd never seen before. And so if you look at over the next 3 years, because this is the traffic drop that we're seeing this year, 25% by 2028, 50% in organic search. So it's not a question whether you had to be visible or not. But for that $7.5 million company, there's a gap of $5.6 million over the next 3 years that if you're not visible, you stand to gain 5.6 million or you stand to lose 5.6 million. And then I wanted to know, what is the contribution of the owner? Exactly half of that, $2.6 million.
Mm.
And so that was shocking to me to go, wow. Something that used to be like, oh, okay, it's sort of a fluffy thing to have a personal brand. Why is that? Because AI loves people over logos. It wants to know your authority, your expertise, your experience, your trustworthiness. And it can find all of that information about a person because a company is made up of individuals. And so when you look at the company that's almost 24 million, 23.9, there's a gap of $18 million. The owner contribution is $8.9 million. And so if you're thinking about, hey, should we invest in AI visibility? Well, you can do your own math. Like maybe your numbers are not, maybe they're over the 24 or they're below the 7.5 million. But the math continues to show that invisible owners and invisible companies are losing millions of dollars. Over the next 3 years, it can add up to a significant amount. And then the other thing, as I talked about the training data, the sooner you jump on this, and again, this window of opportunity should be an encouragement. The sooner you jump on this, guess what? You're going to be buddies with those AI robots because it's going to include you in the training data. It's going to know that you're relevant, and it's going to keep coming back to all the places where you're visible and going, oh yeah, LaTricia is continuing to be visible. Let's give her some visibility. And then the ones who are invisible are going to continue to be pushed down. So now that was a long sort of trail we went on right there. There's a lot more data in that report. It's about 21 pages, but yeah, it was fascinating to me.
Well, and it goes back to though that knowledge is power. And I love that earlier you said you tend to veer towards being the glass is half full, that optimism. Like you can see it as opposition or opportunity based on the lens that you want to look through. But as much as it's like, wow, there are so many different factors to consider. There are so many things that might feel like for some business owners, like, oh, it feels like it's just fighting uphill and this is what's working against us. The ones that see it and team up with the right partners in navigating that landscape, this is a gold mine of opportunity, right? Like, cause it's saying, hey, it's actually rewarding those who show up. And so I feel like there's so many business owners right now that are almost in a sense of a scramble, right? Where it's like, they put all the money into the SEO, the schema and all that. And now we're being told, it's not really helping you as much as maybe it was 3 years ago, right? And then here we're also seeing a bit not even just a bit, a lot of a shift in what you were talking about the leverage of the personal brand. I know for a long time I would hear people say, oh, well, you don't want to have the corporate brand tied too much to the owner, because if you go to sell, then you can't transfer the owner with the business, and that it could actually work against you in that sale. Now we're hearing we do need to lay into the personal brand, and we do need to be smart about how we use it to prop up the corporate brand. What are some things that you guys are seeing as being helpful to business owners who are kind of feeling lost in that scramble on making sense of it and maybe getting over the frustration and really riding on the energy of the opportunity?
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the topic about the owner being tied to the brand. There is a strategy related to that. And so if you believe you're going to exit, I would say even 3 to 4 years out. So there used to be a discount when you went to sell, when you talk about a buyout or an acquisition, where they'd actually discount the price 25% because the person was too visible. But even if you're 3 to 4 years out, and I just gave you the numbers, you can actually sell at a higher multiple because your revenue has increased, and that visibility related to AI is an asset. And so your personal experience can be I believe this, my point of view is this. But as you get closer, maybe 1 to 2 years out, you start transferring that IP, that visibility to the people within the organization. I mean, look at me. I'm a vice president. I'm not the founder. I'm not the owner. Matt's never going to sell. But if he did, like, my visibility would transfer with the business, right? And so identify some key people and start to bring them into the visibility equation. So I just wanted to clarify that. What can people do? Well, the first thing is, and it's interesting, just like fashion, what used to be fashionable comes back around. Traditional PR and having a point of view is the most valuable thing that you can do. Because and I hate to burst everybody's bubble here, but AI is just stupid. It is a prediction engine. If you look behind the scenes at exactly what's going on, every word you type in is a token, and it is statistically extremely fast. It is trying to figure out statistically what is the best next word, and then the next word, and then the next word. And so when it does its training data, it looks at the common answer to a question. So whatever business you're in, I talked about home services, let's use plumbing. So let's say that you want to write a blog post that are the top 10 things to do to make sure your pipes are treated well. Well, what is AI going to do? It's going to go out and look at all the content out there, and it's going to default to the safe middle because statistically, that's the best answer. But if you have expertise and experience to know that everybody else is doing it the wrong way, and these are the top 5 things, and it's somewhat contrarian, that pattern recognition that AI has is all of a sudden going to go, oh my gosh, this company, ABC, that owner is really got a strong opinion. I believe we need to point people towards this. And so you have to be able to speak with authority, speak with a point of view, plant your flag in the ground, and be able to communicate that in a public way. And then you might go, okay, and I have a framework if it's helpful for people to be able to communicate about their business in the most human and authentic way. So don't be satisfied with the generic safe middle, because that's going to hurt you. And then you have to look at, where do these AI models go for training data, and what are they actually interested in? And so I'll just name off a couple, and you don't have to do them all, but I think, again, the bar is really low. Number one, Reddit. You've probably seen a lot of communication about Reddit and where it goes for training data. Why is that? Because it's real conversations. They're heavily policed internally, that if you're promotional, you're going to get booted off the platform. You might investigate that if that's not appropriate right now. Don't feel like it's a must do. LinkedIn is now like the number 2 place. Why? Because it can categorize who you are. Are you a company owner? Are you a VP? Where did you work before? What are your credentials? Do you have association memberships? Are there letters behind your name? What company do you work for? And again, I gave you the stats earlier, 10 posts a year. That can be the difference. So I would investigate LinkedIn. YouTube is another one. AI is actually reading the transcripts of YouTube videos. And you may be freaking out going, oh my gosh, I can't do a YouTube channel. Yes, you can. You have $1,000 camera or video camera that does high definition video in your pocket. There's never been a time where people are more interested in authentic conversations, and it can be very local, right? And so again, I'll use the plumber example again. Maybe you film a video every Tuesday and you go to your local taco shop because you love their tacos and you know the owner is your friend. And you set that phone down and you just make sure you're not backlit, make sure you have good lighting. There's plenty of resources out there to figure out how to do that. Put it on a tripod and you say, hey, I'm at such and such taco place, and oh, Bill is my friend and I just love coming in here, but I'm going to give you the top 5 things. Again, have a point of view. That's an easy way to create a video. It's very locally based. People within the area can see. It'll pick up the transcripts. If you're chicken about that, get on a Zoom call with somebody. That's basically what we're doing here. Do a Zoom call with somebody, have them ask you a bunch of questions, and then post that to YouTube. AI doesn't care how many followers you have. It doesn't care how many people have watched that video. So that's another place you could go. The other thing is you want to maybe introduce yourself to local media. Why? Because they're interested in having experts. If you belong to an association, they probably have a blog. They might have a podcast. Get as a guest on the podcast. Make sure that all of your Google business profile things. And so I've just given you probably 5 or 6 things right now, which sound pretty basic, but you just have to block out the time for you and your team to do them. So hopefully that was helpful.
Very helpful for sure. I know that's one of the things that I appreciated. And I'm taking it as affirmation here. Backing it up where you were talking about PR, right? And that being that, like, even a while back, and this was actually from before we were getting just completely inundated with AI, everything, everywhere. I was looking at my overall marketing strategy, even for my own agency. And I was like, you know what? I don't really want to go toe to toe with other companies like this. I feel like my better space to focus in on is that PR component and what I can do to help leverage, the personal brand and the real conversations to help gain a different point of traction than chasing the market with what's going on just in the now and then having to constantly pivot and adapt. And so, I know that for each company, depending upon their niche, depending upon their stance and all those other things, like so many other factors, like they're going to each have their own strategies. But I love seeing the PR thing coming into being more of a thing again. I love seeing people getting back into real conversations, bringing real value, and that being what's being rewarded nowadays. Like I know for my own, like even with the platforms and stuff like that, I'm not a huge fan of Reddit personally, but I do see where it's like a good tool for a lot of businesses. But I think too, that's where like I appreciated you came back in with LinkedIn right after that. And like even looking at other platforms, it's like not saying you need to be in all of the places, but pick the places that you can intentionally show up well and continue to build on that in a way that even that little bit of effort that's more than what a lot of other people are putting in is going to pay off.
Yeah, only 2% of the business owners that I researched were in that top tier. There's a gap in the middle of people who've done a little bit of stuff, but are not consistent, and they're right at the brink of moving into that top tier. And then there's that 46% of business owners that are completely invisible. And again, it's an opportunity. I was speaking at an event a few weeks ago and a bunch of business owners in the audience. And one guy stands up and he says, look, I just shut down all my social profiles last week. I do not want to be on social media. I don't want to do that. What is your advice? And I'm like, well, you just sat through a 45-minute presentation. I gave you the monetary reason as a business decision why this makes sense. It's up to you. I'm not going to twist your arm and tell you, but I'm telling you, there's an opportunity. And I can already tell by the way you ask that question and how you're standing, you're probably a pretty interesting guy and you've probably got some stuff to say. And so I would just pat you on the back and say, people want to hear it.
Love that. One of the things that I've also appreciated seeing with just some of the different platforms too, with the changes that have been made, is like even looking at YouTube, like when you go in and you put in a video, the number of fields that you can fill out has definitely compounded since like the days of when they first got their start. There's so many different things that you can add in, and for some they might see that and be like, oh my gosh, it's just more overwhelming, there's more to be done. But I think what's cool about it is it actually gives you a lot more places to put key data and to things like that that can actually help to boost your visibility, boost your results, and create more of a compound effect with your efforts over time. So one of the things I wanted to back up to a little bit before we mosey on through the rest of this conversation is the two axis model and the danger zone that you talk about, and looking at the company visibility as well as the owner visibility, and why you split it up that way, what that reveals.
Yeah. So I did that for a couple of reasons, because the traditional behavior is to pour all the money into the company visibility, right? And it can be expensive, and it can be hard to differentiate a company without considering the person or people as part of that company. And then the other reason is, of all the things that I was reading and all the evidence that was coming back, the person kept being the differentiator. And so you mentioned that a few minutes ago. You said you could go down the path of competing with these other organizations, right, head to head, or you could choose your own path. Well, who made that decision? You made that decision and you have a specific point of view related to that. And so in the past, I would say in traditional search, the value was keyword related to products and services of the business. That's not what AI is. And so I'm going to have to take a little bit of an exit ramp here. I'm also going to give the audience permission to not talk about 100 different things. Because what AI is trying to do is it's trying to connect the dots. Who is LaTricia? Oh, LaTricia has a website. She has a company in Pennsylvania. Oh, I can see her LinkedIn profile. Oh, wow, the local chamber, she's a member of that. And oh, they wrote an article about her. Oh, and she also has this podcast over here. And she talks about the importance of brand and. And so as it starts to figure out who LaTricia is, it can paint a picture and then know exactly who you are, what you talk about, and who you're associated with. If you try to talk about 100 different things, you're confusing the robot who is trying to create this connect the dots picture. And so it's much better to talk about 3 to 5 things in a bunch of different places because the game has changed. If you are mentioned in reviews, AI is putting together a sentiment. Is the sentiment about the business positive or negative? Is somebody within the company mentioned in those reviews? Is there an article that's been written about the company? Who is mentioned in that article? If you have a blog post on your website and it doesn't have an author associated with it, like go right now to your team and go, we need to put authors related to this. You could be the author of all of the articles, right? And so now it says, oh, LaTricia publishes a blog post every month, and here's the topic associated with that. And so I'm trying to make sure I don't confuse the conversation, but the reason why there was this fork in the road is yes, visibility for the business is still important. But you're more likely to be categorized in that middle if you're not communicating something very specific about your point of view as a business. Once you start communicating something about your business, it starts to look for who's got that opinion. Because AI has picked up on what Google uses to rank websites as far as the importance of the information. It's looking for, oh, this is funny. We started talking about pizza. The acronym is actually EAT, EEAT. Experience, expertise,
You
authoritativeness, and
planned that.
trustworthiness. And so it's looking for those 4 things. It's hard for a business to have experience or expertise or authoritativeness or trustworthiness because they all relate to a person. They also know that the business owner, the founder, or an executive within that organization or some expert within that organization is probably who somebody asks for, right? And so you go to a restaurant and you see the owner talking to a table and you go, oh, they're pretty important. The owner came out and is talking to them, or the chef. And so that's just the way AI is thinking about it. And so it's just a different mindset. And we have to make sure we allow time, energy, and budget to talk about the humans involved in this equation as well as the business, because that's where the exponential differentiator is for visibility related to AI.
Now, I know my opinion here is completely unapologetically biased, but what I'm hearing echoed here is what has really been something I've been preaching ad nauseum for years now on the importance of brand and having a solid brand strategy, right? Because what are we looking at? Okay, like, historically, when we talk about brand, we talk about refining the messaging. What points are you actually bringing into the discussion? Some people want to talk about everything. And especially when they're going onto their social profiles and they kind of use it as like this catch all, it's the junk drawer in the kitchen. Everything kind of gets dumped there. And people, humans, are confused. And what I'm hearing here is that even a robot that is tasked with figuring out what you actually stand for can't figure out what you stand for. So we can't expect humans that are just casually passing by us in the market to just instantly grab a hold of it. So I think there's a lot of value in saying, okay, we need to tighten up our act. We need to make some adjustments to adapt to the age of AI and the things that are already changing and are only going to continue to change, progress, right? But then is that not more of an incentive to do what we should have been doing all along? And that's making sure that we're very clear on who we are, who we're for, and how those two interact. Like, let's not overcomplicate it. Let's simplify the discussion and just be concise.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you the simplest content framework that will give you enough content for the rest of the year.
Go
And
for
I'm
it.
going to hold up my left hand. So if you're listening, I'm holding up my left hand. If you're watching, you'll be able to see me. I'm going to start with the pinky. We probably remember the pinky promise we gave on the playground as a kid, and you interlocked pinkies and you said, I pinky promise too. And you didn't break that promise, right? Or your name was not good. So what is your business promising? What can you stand behind? What can you be held accountable to your customers, to your employees, to your vendors? And so right there, you've got about 5 or 6 things related to this promise that you're making to the marketplace. I mean, that's a great thing to be different. AI can't write that for you. The next one is the ring finger, and you might think about that as a promise, but it's actually about the relationship. You have to respect the courtship and the relationship. My wife and I celebrated 20 years of marriage. Are you in it for the long haul with your customers? How do they know that? You're not going to ask them to marry you, or you're not going to expecting a yes answer on the first date. So how do you respect that relationship? And then what is the passion that you bring to the business that you're in? Why do you do what you do? Why are you in the location that you're in, right? So there's another 10 or 12 things you can write about. Now, the next one is the middle finger, and I'm not giving LaTricia the finger. I have all my fingers up.
You wouldn't be the first, it won't be the last.
You usually think about that as a vulgar thing, but it's actually a statement of defiance. And so who is your business giving the finger to? Who is the villain? Who do you need to defend your customer against, right? And so you have to name the villain. Like, that's what sports is all about, right? The other team that week is the villain. So you have to name them to get your customers behind it, your team behind it, all of those things. And there's a nice way to do it. You don't have to be rude or divisive, but you have to identify the villain. The next one is the pointy finger. And I say the pointy finger because you have to point to somebody. Like, you got to know who you're talking to. What are their pains? What are their desires? What keeps them up at night? What gets them up early in the morning? If you can't point to a single person, you can't talk about those other 3 fingers. And so think about that. You talk about, who's your ideal client profile? Oh, well, my ideal client profile is any person between 25 and 60. No, it's not. It's one person. It's an amalgamation of your best person, who you can have a conversation with as if you're sitting across the table with a favorite hot beverage. The next one is the thumb. Universal symbol for thumbs up or thumbs down. What should your client do? What should they not do? Are things working? Are they not working? It's also identity, your thumbprint. What thumbprint are you leaving on your community? What do you passionately care about? How are you affecting your team, the customers that you work with, the vendors that you work with? I have 3 sets of twins as nieces and nephews. They can open each other's phones with their Face ID, but they can't open it up with your thumbprint because that's unique to you. What makes you different based on all the experience you've had that you can communicate? And, there's 50 or 60 things right there. Like, if you get stuck, look at a finger, write about that. And AI cannot communicate any one of those fingers because they live deep inside of you. They live from all the experience that you've had as a business. And so that's an easy one that you can just carry around with you.
I love that. I'm putting that one in my pocket. Just FYI. That one's going into client meetings with me. I'm just saying, I'm unapologetically stealing. No, I love it. But I think there's so much power in being able to take what can seem and feel so overwhelming and so complicated and just distill it into something simple, right? Like, when you can distill it into something that's that simple and people can look at it and say, oh, this. And then everything starts to become a lot clearer. And I think having that sense of clarity helps to reshape what the next step should be. How can I better communicate my message to people? So when we were talking about making something, that can be super complicated, we can look at this and say, oh my gosh, Jimmy, there are so many things I thought I was doing right. And then the game changed. And now I don't even know where to start. Like it feels like there are so many boxes to check. And it feels like it's going to take so long to fix this. If you were working with a founder or owner of a company and you're like, you know what, we're going to take a 30-day sprint, what is the first thing that you're focusing on to really get them a point of traction so you can head into the rest of their marketing strategy?
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because if folks download that report, they'll actually get signed up for 5 emails that walk a business owner through exactly those first 30 days. And so I can share a couple of those now, and then folks can sign up and they'll get, and it's not a sales pitch. I genuinely want people to understand that this is something that they should be excited about and not scared about. And so the first thing would be decide, what do you want to be known for? Like those 3 to 5 things. Sure, people may be buying other things from you, but there's probably something that you're really good at that you love talking about. And that's the hardest thing for people to do, is because they feel like if they don't talk about this, then they're going to be missing out. There's this fear of missing out, the FOMO factor. It doesn't mean you can't ever have that conversation again, right? It just means that when you're being triangulated by all these AI, you just got to decide what you want to be known for. And then I would say you want to go through all the properties that you have and make sure they all say your business the same way. Um, so one of the decisions that we made is we used to be known just by Thrive Agency. It was quick, it was easy to say, but it was sort of a mixture all over our different profiles, whether they were social profiles, our Google business profile, our website. And so we made a decision that the best approach was Thrive Internet Marketing Agency. And so we just changed them all. And we actually saw an amazing difference in visibility because it could figure out that this company was all the same because it had the same name. Maybe you've moved addresses or you don't have an address on one thing. Make sure that's all done. And so there are local signals that you can do related to that. The next thing I would say is if you have a blog, do what I told you to do earlier. Make sure there's an author associated with that blog. If not, you might want to start one. Now, I will say that AI loves third-party validation instead of you saying how great you are on your own blog, but it's still valuable. Okay. So that would be number 2 or number 3. Then I would say, you might not want to hear this, but go dust off your LinkedIn profile. Make sure everything's up to date. Don't have some weird creative title. Have exactly what do you want to be known for, right? And so on my LinkedIn, it says invisible owners create invisible companies. Let's fix that. And so that's intriguing. It goes with my thesis of invisible owners create invisible companies. And then the about section is very important. Don't just leave that. And so go through that. And, you can use one of these tools to help you. And you could say, I'm trying to polish up my LinkedIn profile, and go to ChatGPT or Claude and say, what should I do? And it can help you write it, and you can edit it, and you can make it sound a little bit better. And then I would say, if you've got those sort of cleaned up, then you want to figure out where can you commit to showing up on a regular basis. And
Okay.
don't make it difficult. Like I made a decision last year that I wanted to get better at video. And so I said I was going to film a video and post it every day on LinkedIn. And I did 137 videos. And then I decided I wanted to move into writing. And so that was just a personal goal that I had. I'm not saying you don't need, actually, YouTube hasn't traditionally been great for video. It's getting better right now. But if you don't want to sit there and write a script and you're better off the cuff, maybe you want to do video. Doesn't mean you have to film it. Find somebody in your company that can film it for you. There's a lot of resources out there to help you edit it. It doesn't have to be edited with a bunch of spinning logos and things like that. If you're a better writer, use one of these tools to help you write, but don't take the first draft that comes out. You got to wrestle and pull and tug to make it sound like you. Remember, go through the 5 fingers. Or you may want to record audio. You can still post audio on YouTube that doesn't have video. It's not as engaging, but you can still do that. And there's a variety of ways. We were consulting with a client who wasn't very well known in their local community, but they approached the local media and they said, "Hey, if you ever need an expert to talk about this kind of topic, I'd like to do that." Well, they got a call because this situation arose. So you might reach out to your local media and say, "Hey, uh, can I write a column?" My younger brother's a lawyer and they have a community newspaper. And I said, "You got to get a local column." And so they publish once a month, and he's a local column in that paper. And it's also available online. So not only does it come out in print, but it also comes out in a digital format. So I've just listed about 10 different things. Again, you don't have to do them all. Two or three. Set a course for the next year. Say, here are the things that we're going to do. If you have more than one person in your organization, and you have somebody who has an affinity towards one of these things that we just talked about, delegate that to them. Make sure that your company name is associated with it, just like I'm doing. My personal brand is helping the company's brand. So, yeah, those are actionable things that you don't need to hire us for. You could do them yourselves. You just have to carve out the time to do them.
Well, and I like how you transition from get these things taken care of, like let's button this up over here, and then let's focus on what we can commit to showing up well, not doing all the things, not being all the place. Like I'm one that I repeatedly reiterate my own stance on simplicity for the sake of sustainability. That I would rather see people commit to one or two platforms and keep showing up well. And that not being that it has to be, like you said, it doesn't have to be all the bells and whistles and spinny things and custom graphics and all this other stuff. Like even something so simple as a conversation, showing up consistently best you can on those platforms and just letting it continue to grow. So you've covered so much ground when it comes to all the things that people can be doing to really just put so much momentum behind their marketing. The last question I had for you is more for those people where, a lot of the people that are tuned into this channel, they're very values-led leaders, right? They're people who definitely want to walk in a sense of humility as well as excellence. And for some people, I know that when it comes to marketing, they can feel like there's a little bit of a struggle there with like maybe ego and performance and all that. What word would you give them to be encouraged to go out and spread their message to the best of their ability?
Yeah, and I know we share similar worldviews. I would say servant leadership comes to mind because you don't have to wave the flag to say, "I'm the best, look at me." I approach each interview as I truly want a business owner and a business to succeed and figure out what's smoke and mirrors and what can actually help them. And so if that's your mindset, then it's not about you, it's your empathy and your compassion for somebody else. And so love your neighbor and help them with whatever it is that you do and give it away openly online. And that can be your mindset as you go into this. And I think you will have a lot of fun.
Love it. Jimmy, thank you so much for sharing so much. I feel like I could just unpack your brain for days on end when it comes to this. I love that you bring so much experience, but also you've done the deep work, you've done the research to find out. Let's not go on theories, but let's understand what the market's actually doing and how these business owners can leverage it. For those of you that have been watching, I'm going to be making sure that you have links to find Jimmy at Thrive Internet Marketing Agency so that you can especially get in on that report that he promised that you guys would be able to lock in on that and then get those added resources in your email. All of that is going to be in the captions below. So make sure you grab those links today. Don't forget it. Don't get distracted and go do something else. Like do it right now. And then before you hop off here, make sure you also hit that subscribe button so you can catch more on building a brand and a business that you genuinely love. Jimmy, thank you so much. I hope you have a blessed and amazing day. Appreciate you being on the show.
It was a lot of fun, LaTricia. Great conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Take care.